Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today I'm going to do a review on the second episode of Steven Spielberg's new 4-part Netflix documentary series called Encounters. Now, in the previous podcast, I did a review on the first episode. I gave it a 4-star rating. I thought it was that good. The first episode was called Messengers. The second episode, which focuses on the Ariel school UFO incident from 1994, is called Believers. And I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. It's a very good show. Great second part to this series from Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment television company. And I really enjoyed it. I knock off half a star, however, because of the inclusion of somebody on there, one of the students from 1994 who claims that it was all a big lie. The whole thing was a lie. Which goes against what 62 other kids say otherwise. So, and we're going to get into this, and I'm going to show you how this guy actually did lie for this episode. We know that he lied. It's a known fact, one way or the other, right? I have no issue whatsoever calling this guy a liar, and we're going to get into the reasons why. But anyway, before I get into that, I just want to talk about some of the way this episode was set up. Very much like Ariel Phenomenon, which was released last year, put together by Randall Nickerson. Great documentary, which I talked about a lot. As far as I was concerned, that documentary from last year constitutes absolute evidence. I mean, if you were to take all those kids into a court of law to determine whether they encountered extraterrestrials in September of 1994, they would win that case. That's just how good that documentary was from Randall Nickerson. And so this second segment in this Netflix documentary series from Spielberg really had a lot to live up to, and it came pretty close for the most part. It was really well done, and like the first episode, there was some which focused on the Stephenville, Texas incident from 2008. In that episode, there was some new information to come forward that we didn't know about before, and in this episode here, same kind of deal, things I didn't know about. One of the things that it talked about there was had the head mistress from the school, Judy Bates, and she said after that incident happened in September, she was actually abducted by aliens. It was in between the time of the incident and before John Mack, the psychiatrist from Harvard, showed up and interviewed the kids in November of that same year. But in between that time, she said she was abducted, which I thought was very interesting. That was a new revelation that I was not aware of. Also, there was an attorney that represented. There was a lot of discussion about the political intrigue that John Mack had gone through. He was a tenured Harvard professor at the time, a psychiatrist from Harvard, and they were trying to get rid of him, and because a lot of people didn't like that he was investigating alien abductions as well as the Ariel school phenomenon. And they had on his attorney that represented him from that time, Eric McLeish, and he had a lot of interesting things to say as well. But anyway, one of the things that in a way, it was very similar to the documentary from last year, where I had a lot of the same faces from that documentary in this documentary. A lot of the same people who were students in 1994 when this alien craft landed. A whole bunch of kids saw this thing. They saw strange lights coming down from the sky. There was a giant craft landed, and there was smaller crafts hovering around it. They talked about the alien creature that they were standing in front of. They actually went to the very spot. Some of these kids were standing in the very spot where the alien was and where they were standing, and they were very close to this thing. And just as far as I'm concerned, the Ariel school incident is the most. It's the best case we have, as far as I'm concerned, based on all of the testimony from all those kids. Like I've always pointed out, there's no way that this could have been a hoax. There's no way a bunch of elementary school children could pull off a hoax like this and maintain it for all these years. We're almost at the 30th anniversary of that. Next year will be the 30th anniversary of the Ariel school incident. However, there was one person that they interviewed during this whole thing, during this documentary, which His name was Dallyn Vico, or Vico. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but Dallyn said that he made the whole thing was nothing of like that happened at all. And when he was talking, he was like, you could tell by body language, when someone's not telling the truth. When he was for this. In this one scene early on, when he first brought him out to talk about his experience, he says, I made up the whole thing, right? And when he says this, he puts his head down like this, like he can't even look at the camera. Where all these other people, all these other witnesses, they're looking right in the camera. They have no problem telling what they recall from that day. But he tried to claim that he actually fooled all these kids there. He said he saw a shiny rock out in the distance outside of the schoolyard. And he pointed to that rock and told all the kids, "Hey, there's a spaceship and aliens." And they all believed him. And they went there and saw that. And they must have hallucinated or something. And then later on in the show, Dallyn is saying that these people they're just lying all these years, and they need to come clean and tell the truth finally. Now, why this guy's doing this, it's unclear, but we could come up as we go through today's episode. I'll come up with some various theories on what could be going on here. But the guy is a liar, and I could prove that for sure, because he actually told a different story back in 2008 when he was interviewed. So we're going to get into all of that. So one way or another, Dallyn, you're a liar. And I believe the other 62 kids that had this experience, and I don't believe you whatsoever. But it was interesting on Twitter. James Fox actually pointed this out. Of course, James Fox, the filmmaker who put out several UFO documentaries over the years. He writes on Twitter, "Not sure why a Spielberg Netflix series on the phenomenon," Spielberg told me about the Rua case in the late 90s, "would include this individual. What were they trying to accomplish other than insulting the other 60-plus students, including a teacher?" And he has a picture of this guy on there. I'm not going to use any pictures from this documentary because of copyright concerns, but here is a picture of the guy from his Facebook page, from Dallyn's Facebook page. So that's who we're talking about here. But the whole time he was very shifty, not looking into the camera when he's telling a story, and his story didn't make any sense. So basically he's trying to say that he told all these little kids, "Oh, that's a flying saucer out there, this rock, and aliens are there too." And then they believed him and actually saw it and had a mass hallucination. That's what he's trying to say. And then later on, he's trying to say, well, they're all lying. They're all telling a lie because I made it up. Why did he make it up? Well, we'll get into that. But anyway, there were some comments after from James Fox's comment. Somebody from Terry Barlow on Twitter says, "I think they deserve credit for, as it shows they are presenting a balanced view. I don't think many reasonable people would believe him over 62 others. I suspect he has some kind of grudge." Yeah, that could be it. It could be that he just has a grudge and he just wants to tell this lie, maybe as a way to finally get in one of these documentaries. And then another person says, James Falk says, "To exclude it would have been more of an issue. That's why. Basic journalism. You can't just ignore or wish away first-hand folks who don't tell the story you prefer. As it is, the filmmakers handle it perfectly and let the guy impugn his own story with his erratic behavior and nonsensical accusations that everyone else was lying." Exactly, yeah. I mean, to me, it was obvious that this guy was not telling the truth. From when I'm watching it, I couldn't believe it. I mean, just by his body language. When he made the statement, I made up the whole thing. When he made that statement, his head's down like this. He's smoking a cigarette. He's having trouble looking in the camera. He looks real shifty and shady, right? And then he puts his whole head down when he says that because he's lying. That's why. But anyway. So there were comments like that under James Fox's Twitter comment. Kimball says, "I loved that they included him. For me, it was apparent that he may be trying to cope from the experience differently than the overwhelming majority of witnesses from that case. At one point, he even says, the reality I choose to believe is." It gave a lot of depth to the event, in my opinion. I don't know. I guess, in a way, I guess they needed to include it. If you have some guy after all this time stepping forward to say, "Yeah, I'm one of the kids that was there, but I say it didn't happen. In fact, I'm the one who caused all of this trouble." When you have one guy saying that, I guess they had to include him because it was new information. But we're going to talk about why I think this happened as we later on here. So let's see some other comments here. The Pillars of Creation had a comment on her. He says, "Who is this disinfo agent in the new Netflix series Encounters shown in the episode of the Ariel school phenomena? What the heck is he talking about?" He said that this Dallyn is a disgrace. Who the hell does he think he is to judge about over 60 witnesses? All right. Yeah. Who does he think he is? But here's something else that's very interesting. We're going to talk about this Ariel phenomenon Twitter handle. This is from the movie, the Ariel phenomenon movie. It has its own Twitter handle, Ariel phenomenon, and it says Dallyn Vico interview with Randall Nickerson in South Africa in 2008. So it took Nickerson a long time to put his movie together that was released last year. Ariel phenomenon. It took him many years to put that together, and he actually interviewed Dallyn back in 2008, and I don't remember seeing him in that movie in the final product. There was a lot of the other familiar faces we see, but I don't remember seeing Dallyn. But for that interview, and they do have this on video too, which they're going to present at some point. But these are some of the things that he said in 2008. He says, "I believe that the Ariel sighting, although we do not fully understand what happened, there was something definitely that did occur there that was out of the ordinary." He continues, "It was not a regular day at school. It was something very mind-blowing, and sometimes people might think I'm crazy, but I did see something. And I looked up into the sky, and I saw these lights in the sky, but they weren't fixated in one area. The lights were flashing like different colors, blue, red, yellow, purple, but they would like flash and then disappear, and then they would flash again, but maybe a kilometer or a large distance in the air. They would reappear and flash again in a different area. This happened for about 10 minutes, these different color lights flashing. I am certain that I did see something in the sky that I cannot explain. It could have been a government testing. It could have been a lot of different things. But there was definitely something there that I cannot explain, even to this day. I'm turning 24 in September, and at my age, I still cannot fathom or explain what happened on that day. And I would love to find the answers one day to what really happened and really went on." So that's what he said. That's what this guy said back in 2008. Now, for this new documentary that we're talking about here, he's saying something else. So we know that this guy's a liar. He said this back in 2008. Now he's saying this. First, he's in the documentary. It seems like there's multiple lies told. First, he's saying he made all these kids believe they saw a UFO landed and extraterrestrials there, and then later on he says they know that they're lying. Basically, he made it sound like these people are all lying and they know it, and it's time to come clean. This guy's lying. That's who's lying. This guy, I can assure you, right, he's going to become a darling of the debunker community. These people, the debunkers, as we all know, they love liars, they love misinformation, disinformation. They'll hang their hat on any explanation they could come up with. They'll believe this guy over all the 62 other kids that had this experience. Now, this Dallyn tries to make it sound like there was all these first and second graders I told, hey, go see it, right? But there's a flying saucer over there with aliens, right? That's his story, right? But there was other kids that were his age too, fifth and sixth graders that were there that also saw it. And one of the main witnesses that talks about this all these years talks about it. One of the people we see regularly on these documentaries was face to face with one of these beings that was there that day. So why did this guy lie? I don't know, but we'll get into it. We'll talk about it here. On Reddit, there was it was talked about a lot on Reddit. Here was thoughts on Dallyn from Netflix Encounters episode 2. This was a discussion that was started on there. It says here, in short, Dallyn claims to have made up the entire UFO alien story from Ariel School in Zimbabwe to get out of class. Claims it was a shiny rock. First time I've heard of this. Seems weird to come out so many years later and claim he was responsible. Thoughts? And of course, a lot of people on Reddit responded saying, some guy says that guy seems like a crackhead. You can tell he's angry and has his own agenda. Why is he the only one? And let's see what else is said here. It says his rock was only seen by him and 61 other kids seen a UFO. Dude also doubles down, reckons he would approach alien beings because it would be a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He comes across as irrational and envious. Yes, I think so. That's another claim that he makes in this, is that he said he doesn't. If there was an alien there, I would have approached it. He would have right up to it to try to touch it or something. And how absurd is that? If as a grown adult's not going to do something like that. If you were to see a giant flying saucer landing in front of you with an alien being standing right outside of it, I don't think you're going to go walking right up to it. You're not going to do that. A little kid's going to be scared out of their mind. All right, so that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The whole thing was absurd. And then there was a therapist here who claims this therapist lays out their own this therapist named let's see what the name is here. The Unseen Three. On here it says therapist here. Oh boy, I was ready to drop an analysis on him as soon as I finished the episode. I specialize in working with children and adolescents who have experienced trauma and or have mental illness. And then later on, this therapist says, his demeanor and cadence was oddly cutting. He was presenting as very bothered, even angered by the events as described by the 60 witnesses. When his scenes were playing in stark contrast with the others' testimonies, it felt like an authenticity light switch was being turned on and off. Turned on for the other witnesses and off for his scenes. His words were borderline vitriolic, yet felt hollow and rehearsed to me. Not at all like the presentation of the children in their interviews with Dr. Mack or at any other time, even currently, in which the authenticity was palpable. His speech was the most pressured out of all of the witnesses. And then this therapist goes on to say, he made several contradictions. At one point, he stated, I started the rumor because I just wanted to get class canceled, and it worked. But in one of the 1994 clips, the principal mentioned that staff shut down and invalidated the kid's story immediately from the first moment they heard it after the bell, and they carried on with their school day as if nothing happened. Even some of the child witnesses said this. The main witnesses were pulled from class to individually create their drawings at a later instance, not immediately after recess. And the therapist also goes on to say, I also found it odd that he doesn't seem to appear in any of the old videos. I would have liked to see his 1994 videos in comparison to the other children's 1994 videos, except there weren't any shown of him. I've seen every published video and interview regarding this case, as there aren't many. He was not interviewed or at least filmed by Dr. Mack or the news channels who interviewed the children. If he had been, why didn't they show any of his clips? If he was the first one to say something to alert the other kids, which he implied by stating he himself started the rumor, wouldn't the children have said, well, I was on the playground and suddenly Dallyn pointed to an object, or I was playing with Dallyn when Dallyn shouted, look, a UFO. But no one ever mentioned him, then or now. Perhaps I just can't recognize him at a young age in the other videos we have seen, but I'm pretty sure this was the first time any of us had heard of him. Odd. He felt so out of place, and not because he had an opposing view, but because of the reasons I'm presenting. Another thing the therapist says here, one other physical cue that something was off here was every time he made a statement in bitter refute of the 60 or so witnesses, he would gulp immediately afterward. I could see his Adam's apple bob in a heavy swallow after he finished his complete statements, specifically the that didn't happen narratives, before the camera would cut away to another scene with far more genuine interviewees. Believe it or not, every single one of us has a tell we do unconsciously when we lie, when we hold back truth, or when we are discussing something deeply discomforting and highly impactful that we are afraid of admitting to ourselves and others. These tells reveal that our nervous system feels dysregulated, and so our parasympathetic nervous system forces our bodies to swallow, gulp, yawn, scratch, fidget, or excessively blink in an attempt to self-soothe. So there's more to that comment. I'll leave the links for everything I'm talking about here so you can check these things out for yourself. There's a lot more comments in addition to that on Reddit, of course. But yeah, this is fantastic. This is amazing to me that this guy was on there, but I guess you had to. And here you have to wonder, I mean, now if he was interviewed for 2008 and he told a different story, and then finally last year in 2022, the movie finally is released and he's probably watching it and it's not, his segments aren't there. Right? And then now he's on this show, but now his segments are there. So this guy, we've never seen this guy before. Now all of a sudden we're seeing him because he's telling a different story. Is it because he holds a grudge because he didn't appear in the other documentaries that were filmed in the past? Is that what it is? It could be. We don't know. You can only guess. I mean, maybe for all we know, he got paid off. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of a debunker out there that, hey, you know what? Why do you were one of those kids there. You want to do us a favor. For all we know, I don't know. I don't trust the debunkers one bit. Or maybe it was a deputation of debunkers that contacted him. Hey, you were one of the kids there. Why don't you say nothing happened? Go ahead. For one of those documentaries they're making. For all we know, I don't know. Or maybe because when you're in these things, I don't know how these things work. I think you get paid money. If they're interviewing you and they're having you go through all the trouble to go on, to show up at a certain time and film yourself, and you're going to be on a documentary that's going to be there forever, I'm sure you get some money for it. Maybe this time he wanted to make sure he gets some money for it. How do we know, right? And because he didn't get on the other shows, but now this time he's telling a different story, so they probably felt compelled to put him there, being that he was one of the kids that was there in Ariel that day. Who knows? But whatever the case is, the guy's lying. He told a different story in 2008. Now he's saying, no, it's a big lie. I was the one who started the whole thing. They just fell for it. How is that possible? I remember being a little kid in first and second and third grade, right? If somebody would have pointed to a rock and said, there's a UFO, I would have looked at it and said, oh, that's just a rock. Kids aren't that stupid, right? The whole story stunk, and the guy had all the signs of a liar. I'm not a body language expert, but I looked up, before I did this episode, I looked it up a little bit, because, like I said, when this guy first comes on the screen, he starts talking, he actually goes, he's talking, he's looking at you, and then he puts his head down, he says, I made up the whole thing. I was smoking a cigarette, real shady. I made up the whole thing. All right. But anyway, here's an article from the Economic Times. This was published in 2015. It says 13 signs someone is lying to you. Okay. It says here, a majority of the people you talk to on a daily basis are big fat liars. A 2002 study conducted by the University of Massachusetts Amherst psychologist Robert Feldman found that 60% of people lied during a 10-minute conversation, and they told an average of 2 to 3 lies in that time. Luckily, fibs are fairly easy to spot. You just have to know the signs. Dr. Lillian Glass, a behavioral analyst and body language expert who has worked with the FBI on unmasking signals of deception, says when trying to figure out if someone is lying, you first need to understand how the person normally acts. Then you'll want to pay careful attention to their facial expressions, body language, and speech patterns, she writes in her book, The Body Language of Liars. Here's one of the things, though, they talk about. One of the things that liars do, right? They change their head position quickly. If you see someone suddenly make a head movement when you ask them a direct question, they may be lying to you about something. The head will be retracted or jerked back, bowed down, or cocked or tilted to the side, writes Glass. This will often happen right before the person is expected to respond to a question. So there you go, folks. There's another thing that we could look at. We could tell what this guy's lying. The other interviewees, when you watch this documentary, you will notice that they are not acting the way this guy is acting. This guy's all jerky, he's shifty, he's moving around. And when he makes that statement, I made up the whole thing, his head's down like this. He says, I made up the whole thing. Puts his head, he can't even look at the camera when he's saying it because he's lying. In 2008, he told a whole different story. Now he's saying this story. Again, we could all speculate on why he's doing it, right? Is it just to get on the TV show, right? Is it just to make sure that he's featured this time because he wasn't in the last time, right? Is that what it was? Was the idea of I need to get on the show because I'll make a couple bucks? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? We can only speculate, but I don't believe the guy. There's 62 other people saying otherwise. But again, this is going to be something this guy will become a darling of the debunker crowd. You might see this guy on TV more now than any of these other people from Ariel School. Watch out for that, too. He'll be Mick West's guest on some of his shows later on. I'm sure Mick West is probably already contacting the guy. Hey, can you come on my show? Because you remember Mick West's excuse for this, the one that he promoted a year ago or whenever when he was talking about the puppets. Right, the magical puppet troupe that showed up, So maybe now he has somebody who says, "Hey, I made the whole thing up." So now they'll have that guy to hang their hat on. So you got to wonder the reasoning behind all of this stuff. But the guy, as far as I'm concerned, this guy liar. That's what I say, liar. You have all these other witnesses telling you otherwise. Right. Not only that, you could tell by the way the guy's talking, and we know that he lied. When he was interviewed previously by Randall Nickerson. Right. What happened? What happened? He told a different story. Yeah, something weird happened that day. Most certainly. That stuff didn't end up in the documentary. Now he's finally got his wish. He's in a documentary now. Right. So there you go. That's what's going on with that. So I think we needed to, that's something right when I saw it, I was watching this, I actually was watching the documentary again last night. I'm looking at it again. I was like, oh my God, I just can't believe what I'm seeing. I just can't believe what I'm seeing. this guy's, I never saw this guy before. I was thinking, is this, when you first see him, right, I thought, well, another witness, and one of the kids that we never saw before. But there were lots of other kids. There's a lot of other kids that saw this that you never see in these documentaries. For instance, there was a guy, his name is Zaw. I saw him on some different documentaries before, and he's mentioned in the Wikipedia page on this incident. It says in June 2021, this is on Wikipedia, Barstool Sports writer Zaw, he writes for Barstool Sports, spoke in an interview about being a pupil in Ariel that day. He recounted that he saw a bright light come down from the sky and aliens exit it. Other witnesses were interviewed in the 2020 documentary The Phenomenon and spoke about how the experience has affected them. So Zaw was one of the witnesses. I've seen him being interviewed in other YouTube channels and stuff like that, but I never saw him in one of these major documentaries. But he's one of the other witnesses too, and he's been saying the same story all these years as well. Well, I just want to point something out here as an afterthought. If you go to the Ariel School UFO incident on Wikipedia, right, it's just a joke. It seems like there's more stuff in there from the skeptics, right, than there is from the UFO experts and the people that investigated this stuff. That's what it always seems like to me. For instance, it seems like this Brian Dunning, not Brian Dummy. Sorry, Brian. Skeptic Brian Dunning. He says here, it says, there was stuff that was seen before the Ariel School. Leading up to that incident, there was some sightings of UFOs. And he was saying that the fireball that people were seeing in the sky at that time was basically the re-entry of the Zenit 2 rocket from the Cosmos 2290 satellite launch. The Brewster broke up into burning streaks as it moved silently across the sky, giving an impressive light show to millions of Africans. Local UFO researcher Cynthia Hind recorded other alien sightings at the time, including a daylight sighting by a young boy and his mother, and a report of alien beings on a road by a trucker. Now, I just want to talk about some of the video that was taken, leading up, the weeks leading up to that Ariel School incident in Zimbabwe. There was I saw some video that were objects that weren't, most certainly not meteors. Nobody knows what they were. But anyway, you continue with this article, and it gets into more of the Brian Dunning stuff here. Like, why is this guy who's never went there, never interviewed anybody, but yet he gets a prominent paragraphs in the story of the Ariel School incident in this Wikipedia page? It's absolutely absurd. It says here, in December 2020, Brian Dunning devoted an episode of his Skeptoid podcast to the incident. In it, he noted that some children in the school reported that they had not seen anything unusual that day. He challenged the often repeated statement that as rural school children in Zimbabwe, the witnesses would not have had exposure to modern media and so would not have been familiar with the concept of UFOs and alien visitors. He also criticized the interviewing techniques of Hind and Mack. Well, yeah, but these people, right, they're so disingenuous it makes you sick, right? Brian Dunning, this guy, he's just as much of a jerk as some of these other debunkers you hear about. I've talked about him in other shows, but anyway, like they just can't accept this reality. They're too dumb. Brian Dunning or Dumbbell or whatever his last name is, right? He's too dumb, right? And they make their living doing this, Skeptoid. I mean, who the hell would want to listen to some trash like that? Honest to Christ. But anyway, yeah. So this guy here we're talking about here, he's going to become a darling for the debunkers like that. I guarantee you're going to see this guy's he's going to be on tour now. He'll be on tour. He'll be showing up on shows like Brian Dumbbell's show or whatever, right? He'll be on stuff like that, telling his horse dump stories, right? That's what's going to happen now. Good for him, I guess. I guess it'll be worth it. I'm sure he'll get a few bucks every time for every show. Good show. Good job. Nice work. Anyway, one more thing. I want to go through the last couple polls that I have on Spotify, just to give you an update on where they all are at this point. For the episode, the UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon is a smart people problem / Alaska Triangle, I asked the question, do you believe that extraterrestrials may be responsible for some of the 20,000 disappearances in the Alaska Triangle since 1970? And as of today, it's up to 76 votes with 25 days left. 10 people say no. or 13.2%, and 66 people say yes, or 86.8%. So yeah, I'm with the yeses on that one. I think that yeah, they are responsible for some of these disappearances. I'm certain of it. I'm sure of it. Doesn't make me right, but that's my feeling. And also for yesterday's episode, so far, yesterday's episode was review of first episode of Steven Spielberg's new Netflix UFO documentary Encounters. I asked this question: what is the explanation for the gargantuan flying craft witnessed by hundreds of people in the Stephenville, Texas area in 2008? So far, there's only 31 votes, but there is 27 days left, so you could still get to vote on this if you please. Let's see. We have 1 vote, or 3.2%, for atmospheric phenomena. I say definitely no to that one. We have 1 vote, or 3.2%, for mass hallucination. No, I think that person who put that on there is hallucinating. We have 2 votes, or 6.5%, for mirage. No, I don't believe that. I think there was too many witnesses, too many people, and no, I don't agree with that at all. 5 people, or 16.1%, say military jets. Now I'm wondering, who are these 5 people who are going for military jets? Is it the military themselves? Maybe some Pentagon generals? Yeah, it was just military jets that people saw that day. No, there's no such thing as extraterrestrials or giant triangle crafts. They were just some jets in formation. Yeah, that's all it was. Or maybe it was a mirage. Or, you know what? Mass hallucinations. These people might be, all these witnesses might be crackpots. You know what? Yeah, maybe it was a hoax. Yeah, actually, hoax and satellites, nobody voted for that yet. Maybe it was a hoax. Yeah. It was all these people, hundreds of people in Stephenville area. It was a big hoax. Actually, what it was satellites, you know. Yeah, satellites. But luckily, the majority voted, let's say, 22 people, or 71% so far, say they think it was extraterrestrials / non-human intelligence responsible for the gargantuan flying craft spotted by hundreds of eyeballs in Stephenville, Texas area back in 2008. And it was not what the Pentagon would probably have make you believe. Yeah, it was atmospheric phenomena. That's, yes, don't worry about it. Nothing, there's no such thing as extraterrestrials or aliens. Anybody who believes that, crazy. Anybody who tells you otherwise, don't listen to them, listen to us. We wouldn't lie. I'm telling you right now. We're not going to lie to you. Roswell was a balloon. Don't worry about it. Go home. Go to sleep. Crash test dummies. That's what they saw. There's no such thing as aliens with big heads and big black eyes. It's ridiculous. Anyway, go to home. Don't worry about it. Anyway, I want to say thank you for joining me. Until next time.